It was April 28, 1988. In Hawaii, the sun was shining and almost 100 people were getting on a plane. They thought it was going to be a usual short flight, just like any other they've taken. But this flight was about to become a story they'd never forget. What could happen on such an ordinary day? The plane, a big Boeing 737, took off without any trouble. People found their seats, looked out the windows, and started chatting or thinking about what they'd do once they landed. Into the crew, 5 friendly faces were there to make sure everyone was happy. But was everything as okay as it seemed? Halfway into the flight, everyone was relaxed. Kids were giggling, and passengers were enjoying snacks and drinks. From up high, the clouds and ocean looked pretty cool. It was peaceful, really peaceful. But can peace sometimes be misleading? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Aloha Airlines, the company flying the plane, was known for being safe. Their planes, like this Boeing 737, were checked all the time to make sure they were okay to fly. Safety was a big deal and everyone trusted that flying was safe. But are there some things we just can't see coming? One passenger, Gail Yamamoto, saw something strange before the flight. There was a crack in the plane's body. She thought it was weird, but she didn't say anything. Sometimes, little things can lead to big problems. Can something small really cause a big scare? Clarabelle Lansing was working on the plane that day. She had been helping people in the skies for 37 years. She was really good at her job, always smiling and making people feel comfortable. But could even her years of experience prepare her for what was about to happen? The pilots, Captain Robert and First Officer Malign, were flying the plane like any other day. It's a they had flown a lot and knew what they were doing. Down in the cabin, the crew made sure everyone was okay. It seemed like a regular flight, but is any flight really just regular? Every person on that plane had their own story. Some were going on vacation, some were going home, and some were on a work trip. They all trusted the crew and the plane to get them there safely. They were all in this together, flying through the sky. How strong is trust when things go wrong? As the plane flew on, nobody knew they were heading into a moment that would change everything. It wasn't just about getting from one place to another anymore. They were all part of a bigger story now. What happens when an ordinary trip becomes extraordinary? Right before everything changed, the plane was just flying. People were laughing, the engine. It was a peaceful moment, but it was about to be broken. What does it feel like when everything suddenly changes? Midway through the flight, a loud sound pierced the calm, followed by a sudden and unsettling vibration. The chatter ceased, replaced by a thick silence as everyone tried to understand what had just happened. This wasn't normal turbulence, it was something much more serious. In the moments that followed, passengers looked to each other, searching for reassurance where there was none to be found. Without warning, the temperature inside the cabin dropped sharply. People shivered, pulling their jackets tighter around them. The once cozy atmosphere of the plane had transformed into a cold, unwelcoming space. In a chilling breeze hinted at a problem far greater than a malfunctioning air conditioning system. It was clear from the flight attendants' faces that this was no ordinary issue. Their trained smiles faltered as they moved through the cabin, checking windows and doors, their professionalism masking an underlying concern. The crew's demeanor raised an unspoken question: what was happening to the plane? The cabin was abuzz with speculation. Did you hear the noise? Why is it so cold? All of a sudden, passengers exchanged theories, some trying to downplay their fears, others amplifying them. Amidst the growing murmur, the crew's attempts at reassurance seemed to fade into the background, overshadowed by the growing unease. One passenger's gasp drew attention to the window. Through the glass, a horrifying sight unfolded. The skin of the aircraft appeared torn, exposing the plane to the harsh elements outside. This visual confirmation of their fears silenced the cabin. There was no denying it, now they were in grave danger. Noticing the passenger's alarm, the flight attendants sprung into action with renewed urgency. Their calm instructions to fasten seatbelts and stay calm couldn't completely mask their rapid movements and tense expressions. Their actions spoke volumes, confirming that the situation was as serious as it seemed. The weight of his words hung in the air, offering a momentary sense of relief. Yet, the captain's steady tone could not fully dispel the growing fear. In the quiet that followed the captain's announcement, passengers closed their eyes, taking deep breaths, trying to find inner peace amidst the turmoil. There was a silent acknowledgement of their shared predicament, a bond forming in the face of adversity. It was a moment of introspection, of finding one's strength in the eye of the storm. Despite efforts to stay composed, the strain of the situation began to show. Cries and calls for help punctuated the air, a stark contrast to the captain's soothing assurances. A thin veneer of calm was breaking, revealing the raw fear beneath. It was a reminder of how quickly circumstances can push us to the brink. As the plane continued its uneasy flight, the passengers found themselves clinging to any sign of hope. In the shared glances and whispered words of encouragement, there was a silent vow to face whatever came together. It was a testament to the human spirit's resilience, to its ability to seek light even in the darkest of times. As whispers of fear turned into vocal concern, the passengers noticed something terrifying. The crack that had been mentioned by a few observant individuals was now clearly visible, running along the side of the plane. It seemed to grow wider as they watched. Despite the rising panic, a sense of unity began to form among the passengers. People who were strangers just moments ago started comforting each other, sharing stories of their lives below the clouds. And in the face of danger, human connections were forged in the cold, thin air. The captain, realizing the gravity of the situation, made a crucial decision. With a steady voice, he announced an emergency descent to the nearest airport. This maneuver was not without its risks, but it was their best chance at survival. How would passengers react to this sudden change of plans? One flight attendant, her face a mask of determination, moved through the cabin, checking on each passenger. Her actions were a beacon of hope, a reminder that not all was lost. Her presence provided comfort to those who had started to despair. As the plane began its rapid descent, an unexpected calm settled over some of the passengers. The initial shock had passed, and now there was a quiet acceptance and a strong desire to support one another, no matter the outcome. For a moment, as the plane descended through the clouds, there was silence. The only sound was the rushing of air against the fuselage. It was a surreal moment of peace amidst chaos, a brief respite for the passengers to gather their thoughts and brace for what was to come. The crew quickly instructed the passengers on how to brace for potential impacts. Heads bowed and hands clasped tightly, everyone followed the instructions, hoping against hope that they would make it through unscathed. Through the windows, the ground became visible. The sight of it, so far yet rapidly approaching, was both terrifying and comforting. It meant the possibility of landing safely, but also the imminent threat of a crash. In the final moments before touchdown, the plane was eerily quiet. Passengers held their breath, some silently praying, others thinking of their loved ones. It was a moment of collective anticipation, the outcome still hanging in the balance. The sound of screeching tires and the roar of engines working to slow down filled the air. Relief washed over the passengers as they realized they had landed safely. But as they would soon find out, the ordeal was far from over. How would they cope with the aftermath of such a harrowing experience? As the plane finally came to a stop on the runway, a collective sigh of relief swept through the cabin. Passengers and crew alike shared looks of gratitude, their bond strengthened by the ordeal they had just endured. The realization that they had survived against all odds was overwhelming. Yet, amidst the relief, there was a palpable sense of loss for what had been a routine flight turned nightmare. When the doors of the aircraft opened, the passengers were met with a rush of fresh air and the sound of emergency vehicles approaching. Stepping onto the tarmac, they were greeted by a scene of organized chaos, with responders ready to provide aid. This moment marked the transition from a fight for survival in the air to dealing with the aftermath on the ground. As they were led to safety, many passengers remained close, unwilling to part ways with the strangers who had become their lifelines during the flight. Contact information was exchanged, and promises to stay in touch were made. The experience had forged unlikely friendships that would endure long after their physical wounds had healed. Almost immediately, aviation authorities began an inquiry into the incident, which denied the crack in the fuselage, which had seemed insignificant at first, was now the focus of a thorough investigation. Experts combed through every inch of the aircraft, determined to understand the failure and prevent it from ever happening again. In the days following the emergency landing, stories of courage and heroism emerged. Among them was the tale of the flight attendant who, despite the risk to her own safety, had ensured that every passenger was prepared for the landing. Her bravery was celebrated by passengers and crew alike, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. As news of the incident spread, it captured the attention of the public worldwide. People were shocked by the images of the damaged aircraft and moved by the stories of survival. The event prompted a global conversation on aviation safety, with many calling for stricter regulations and oversight. In the weeks that followed, survivors gathered for meetings and vigils to support one another. They shared their stories, cried together, and began the process of healing. For many, these gatherings were a crucial step in coming to terms with the trauma they had experienced. In the investigation into the incident led to significant changes in aviation safety protocols. Airlines around the world reviewed their maintenance procedures, and regulators introduced new rules designed to prevent similar failures. The incident had been a tragic reminder of the importance of vigilance and continuous improvement in the pursuit of safety.